remember that these price floors, they are not very often used. Not very often in the sense that the government would not give a price floor on every other product. But the only product that very frequently receives a price floor from a lot of governments all across the world, both rich and poor governments, they would often give a price floor on agricultural products or crops. And the reason is that the justification or the argument is that the producers of these crops, the farmers, they are usually the poor segment of the society. They are the most disadvantaged segments of the society. So the government wants to, come in and tell them that, look, at least we can guarantee a certain minimum price that you will get for selling your crops and earning a living. And secondly, the other issue is that the government sometimes feel that, look, the total supply of these crops every year, that is the total harvest, it fluctuates a lot. It depends on weather conditions, it depends on natural disasters and so on and so forth. So every year the supply of this crop will be very volatile, it will be fluctuating, and therefore the market will sometimes determine a price of 50, sometimes a price of 20, sometimes a price of 60, and so on and so forth. So since the supply keeps on fluctuating, the prices fluctuate, and in turn the incomes that these farmers earn every year, they become very uncertain, and that in itself can be a cause of economic hardship. So that can be another reason why the government comes in and tells these farmers that, look, at least you can be assured that you will get 75 rupees. Anything above that is a bonus, but we will not let the price fall below 75, even if supply fluctuates and goes here and there. So those are the few basic arguments behind governments giving these agricultural subsidies. Now, whether they work or not, again, it's the same generic answer, that if these price floors on crops are by law, they won't work, they will just create a surplus. But if they are backed up by the guarantee that the government will buy the surplus, then they will work. They will work as far as helping the producers is concerned. But that is where things get interesting. You see, we said that the negative part of the scheme of supporting a minimum price through stock purchase is that it involves a cost for the government. Now, I know that most of us think that government is too rich, it has a lot of resources, a lot of money. So yes, there is a cost, but most of you won't be able to fully realize that, it's a serious amount of cost. And that becomes clear when we are talking about these price floors guaranteed by stock purchases given to agricultural crops, because the thing is that it is usually the rich developed countries that offer these sort of guaranteed minimum prices to their farmers. The two reasons that I discussed, to support their incomes and to prevent them from volatile incomes, are true, that those are the reasons these rich countries give these support prices to the farmers. But additionally, they also want some of the people to stay within farming. So the government sort of sometimes guarantees a least minimum price so that farming becomes profitable, and at least some people in these developed countries stay on their farm. That sort of first of all ensures that a certain traditional lifestyle is maintained, so that's a pretty romantic idea. But on a more serious note, it ensures that there is some sort of food security available to these countries. They're not totally dependent on some other countries to import all that they need in terms of food. Now, the seriousness and the amounts involved are so big that in the last 3 years, on average, the European Union, in order to maintain this sort of a policy, has been using on average $50 billion every year to buy these surpluses that the farmers produced once the European Union guarantees them minimum prices. So this is a serious amount of cost, a huge cost. And this is even more serious because you see, the farmers in the poor countries, even if these poor countries guarantee a certain price floor, it's usually by law because they can't afford paying these sort of amount, $50 billion, to sort of guarantee that they will buy the surpluses. So usually it is just by law, and that creates problems. Sometimes it is backed up by stock purchase guarantees, but then they will be able to offer only a slightly higher minimum price because they don't have the resources. Think of a country like Pakistan. They don't have $50 billion to support the incomes of farmers. Now that all adds up into a very interesting situation when we look at this fourth cost that we talked about. That these price flows guaranteed by stock purchases will create distortions in the international market. Because you see, we said that the surplus that the government buys, it will throw that in the international market of that product, which starting from its initial equilibrium, when some rich country like the European Union, if it is buying $50 billion of surplus corn every year and then dumping it, sort of throwing it in the international market, then the supply in the international markets will increase. And therefore, the international price of this product, this crop, will go down. And this is going to hurt farmers sitting in a poor country like Pakistan. Their governments can't support such a price, and when these farmers from a poor country like Pakistan, when they take their output of this crop into the international market to sell and earn a living, they will be disappointed to see that the prices in the international market are really depressed. Why? Because in the European Union or the US, because US again is, in fact, it's one of the biggest spenders on the scheme. Therefore, since the US and the European Union, they are spending billions of dollars to buy all of the surplus, so it must be a huge amount of corn, and then they are dumping it in the international market. So the Pakistani farmer, the farmer in the poor country, he will really suffer. So a little bit of this knowledge, this background, will first of all allow you to sort of, grasp the seriousness of these 2 points that we have made. And overall, it gives you a little bit of more ammunition with which you can answer these questions on price flows. And if it is specifically asking you about a price flow given to agricultural crops to help the farmers, then all of this information, you can mix that up, add in to this generic answer that we developed in the last video.